Nigeria's anti-drug agency says it's arrested Abba Kyari, a highly decorated police officer. Mr. Kyari, who was already suspended for allegedly helping the self-avowed fraudster Hush Puppy launder his money, is now accused in a cocaine plot. Arise correspondent Ndlea reports.
Barely hours after he was declared wanted over his alleged link with the drug cartel, Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba Kyari has been arrested by the Nigeria Police and handed over to the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. The Narcotics Agency had earlier reported that 5 days after he was invited by the agency, Kyari was yet to hand himself over for questioning.
With intelligence at our disposal, the agency believes strongly that DCP Kyari is a member of a drug cartel that operates the Brazil-Ethiopia-Nigeria illicit drug pipeline. And he needs to answer questions that crop up in an ongoing drug case in which he is the principal actor. His failure to cooperate forced the hand of the agency, and that is the reason for this press briefing. Now let me give you a synopsis of what transpired. The saga started on Friday, January 21, 2020, when DCP Kyari initiated a call to one of the Ndlea officers in Abuja at 2:12 p.m. When the officer returned the call 2 minutes later, Kyari informed him he was coming to see him to discuss an operational matter after the Jumat service. He appeared at the agreed venue of the meeting with the officer and went straight to the crux of the matter. And this was it. His team had intercepted and arrested some traffickers that came into the country from Ethiopia with, according to him, 25 kilograms of cocaine. He proposed a drug deal where he and his team are to take 15 kilograms of the cocaine and leave the 10 kilograms for the prosecution of the suspects arrested with the illicit drug in Enugu. In the meantime, the purloined cocaine, that is the depleted cocaine, will be replaced with a dummy worth 15 kilograms. He asked the Ndlea officer to persuade men of the FCT command to play along as well.
The Ndlea alleged that Kyari had attempted to compromise its officers in an ongoing investigation and tampered with exhibits in the case of drug trafficking. The agency further released video evidence indicting Kyari during a sting operation. The recent development is taking place against the background of Kyari's suspension for his alleged involvement in a different fraud case being investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The police also confirmed the arrest of 4 other officers for their involvement in the alleged case of criminal conspiracy, including discreditable, unethical and unprofessional conduct. The suspects include ACP Sunday J. Ubwa, ACP Bawa James, Inspector Simon Agiba and Inspector John Nuhu, while the Nigeria Police Force have contributed actively in Kyari's investigation and arrest. One of the unanswered questions is his level of participation in police activities while on suspension. Ndlea, Arise News.
Isn't this just a jaw-droppingly spectacular fall from grace? I mean, really. This is such a highly decorated police officer meant to be the future of the Nigerian police force, already reeling from the disgrace of being wanted for extradition to America. He's been suspended. The Police Service Commission just had to say they're giving another panel 2 weeks to reconsider his case, and now this has happened, and he's now being arrested. In the middle of a suspension, he's organizing, drug deals. And it was so striking to me when he said, that part of Ferdinand's report from the press conference that the Ndlea gave about how he's just going to go for the Jumat prayer service and then we'll meet up and discuss a drug deal. I mean, if that doesn't tell you all you need to know about the society that we live in, I don't know what will. This is a complete shame. And these are even more serious allegations than what he was facing before. And now it's him and there are others. There were 5 police officers, according to Ferdinand's report just now, including DSP Abba Kyari. But how far does this rot go? They cannot be the only ones. There's now been allegations that have been shared in a press release that some of the drug dealers were cleared by Ndlea officials in the Akanu Ibiam International Airport in Enugu, that they know when the drug dealers are coming, they clear them. Who are those Ndlea officials? There's now going to have to be an investigation into those people. As for those who worked with the Ndlea and, the informants who managed to, organize this sting operation, there was also talk of them being threatened, and obviously every effort must be made to protect their lives. But it must be ensured that Abba Kyari, through all legal means, is made to sing like a canary. We need to know exactly how far this goes. It's extremely damaging because of the way the general public perception of the police. This is the last thing the police force needs.
Yes, you are quite correct. This is again very bad for the image of the Nigerian police force. That police officers, will be fingered as being part of a drug cartel. The spokesperson of the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency says this cartel operates from Brazil to Ethiopia and Nigeria. So it's a ring, of operation. And of course, what we can say is that, look, justice must be done. These persons should be made to go through due process. And I assume that even the investigations in this case, would be relevant one way or the other, because the Ndlea spokesperson, Femi Babafemi, was saying that they have a trove of, data, information, intelligence that had been collected, including photos and videos. And they presented it in such a way that, look, just as the Attorney General of the Federation said, with regard to the FBI investigation and the arrest warrant issued by a magistrate court in the United States, with regard to DCP Abba Kyari, they are saying, the Ndlea also, that Abba Kyari and the 4 others have a case to answer because they, on their own, have been able to establish a prima facie case. Well, but there are certain curious sides to it. This is a man who is undergoing investigation, who is being investigated by the FBI. It's also being investigated by the Nigerian police force. The story of Abba Kyari looks like a page from those classic tragic, episodes. How further, can he still fall? There is talk about extradition. So I find it very curious because I looked at the date in the Ndlea statement. They were talking about January 2022. That's a man who is on suspension. That's a man who is being investigated. That's a man that 2 different investigating panels were looking into his affair. And then he will have the audacity to also now try to bribe another officer of the state. But I think it's important that the government gets to the bottom of it. However, certain conspiracy theories have shown up, since this particular announcement was made by the Ndlea, and the police also confirmed that they have arrested DCP Abba Kyari. And I think that those conspiracy theories are a reflection of what Nigerians think of their government and how their government operates. Now, some people think the story is too histrionic to be believed. I've seen such comments. I've also seen some people say, oh, this is an attempt at a cover-up, that the Nigerian government, does not want to extradite Abba Kyari to the US. So they've come up with something even more, serious, drug-related crime, and that they would say that he's being tried in Nigeria for drug-related offense. Hush Puppy is also being investigated for drug-related issues and money laundering and BEC, whatever they call it. So, because of what I refer to as double jeopardy, then of course Nigeria may not find any reason to extradite him, and that somewhere down the line he will be released. Well, I hope that is not the case, because conspiracy theories are what they are, conspiracy theory. I think it would be a big scandal for anybody to try to use the instruments of the Nigerian state or, Nigerian state processes to play that kind of game with public imagination. But whatever it is very clear that Abba Kyari, with all of these accusations, his career is over. And the police, have been heavily damaged. They will have to do a lot to be able to convince the average Nigerian that the police is an institution that can be trusted. Unfortunately, those honest officers, those untainted officers, will also be invariably tarred with the same brush, most unfortunately, considering how strategic the police is as an institution. When you have rogue cops, you have criminal cops, policemen aiding and abetting crime, then again, what is left of the functions of the police in society?
I mean, the conspiracy theorists can rest assured that that's just not how it works. Double jeopardy, you cannot be tried for an offense for which you have been acquitted or convicted before. Yeah. So this is a different offense. This will not stop any extradition. If he is prosecuted for this drug trafficking offense and this, racketeering, whatever charge they're going to lay against him,
if he's
he can still...
The two can be joined.
Exactly. No, and he can still be extradited and charged. Remember Manuel Noriega? Yeah. After he was extradited to America, he was then extradited to France after America was done with him. Every jurisdiction will have their bite out of the person. So no,
but it's up to Nigeria to extradite.
Yes, it is. If he can prove that, he should be extradited. Well, that's all on the news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rota Sadiri, Michael Wilson, Adeswa Omorwan, and Aaron Akirajola to give us updates on Africa and global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. For a global business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Well, good morning, Tundan. Actually, I'm very sorry that I missed your birthday last week as well. So many happy returns
for
last week. And actually, I'm not in London for the next few weeks. I'm actually in Cape Town at the tip of South Africa. So nice. I'm joining you from there, still doing my global look at things. And clearly, all the worries about an invasion, as far as Ukraine is concerned, are not helping stock markets at all. Everybody's nervous. Nobody really knows. The expectation, perhaps, is that there may be some sort of invasion tomorrow. I'll come on to what the markets are making of it, as far as I can see right now. But as far as the Asian markets are concerned, Japan's economy up by 5.4%. Quite good for them, given the sort of rate of growth they've been not enjoying for the past few years. But again, a bit of a disappointment. Reuters were looking at a 5.8% from their growth from their poll of economists, but not too bad. And global markets, as I said, very much on edge this morning. Mainland Chinese stocks slightly higher this morning, up about 0.4%. And by the afternoon, the Shenzhen component of that had advanced about 140, and Hong Kong trading lower. But given that there are no signs that President Putin of Russia has actually stopped any steps to war, the markets are just really treading water, but it's very, very volatile indeed. I've got an interesting bit of information for you, that ETFs, now this is a way of, exchange-traded funds are a way of getting into equities without actually going for individual companies. What they do is track indexes, and there's a tremendous hunger being shown in South Korea for the metaverse, these companies that, gaming companies and the rest of it. And there were 8 metaverse ETFs existing up, this is of January the 19th, drawing in $1 billion of investment from people in South Korea. And so 70% of the inflows are into these sort of stocks. I have mentioned in the past that probably the metaverse is the coming thing for 2022. I wouldn't like to bet on it myself, but it seems as though an easy way in is through these ETFs, and certainly South Korean investors are lapping it up. Let's turn our attention to Wall Street, and stock futures overnight very, very slightly up, but again, a very, very volatile day yesterday on Wall Street. Dow Jones down considerably, NASDAQ more or less flat lining by the end of the day. Here's a bit of a warning from US regulators I should draw your attention to. A warning of risks in leveraged loan market. Now, if you remember, you don't have to have a long memory to remember the financial crisis of 2008, and this was down to banks sucking up as many loans as possible. This is now about commercial property, commercial real estate companies, which have obviously suffered during the pandemic. So the regulators giving a warning to banks there. Warren Buffett bought $1 billion in Activision. Activision is the video games maker, which was eventually bought by Microsoft. It's responsible for games like World of Warcraft and Call of Duty. Not been a great deal of movement as far as Berkshire Hathaway, should I say, has actually been investing in over the past couple of years. So this has been quite a big acquisition for them. I'll take you to the world's largest miner, which is BHP. A record dividend for them, $7.8 billion. That's their half-year dividend. That's quite important, but I think much more important is the way in which they're going to shift two things. First of all, to metals which are in the transition phase from fossil fuels to electric power, and so nickel and copper. They want half of their product to be that by 2030, and they're also joining up with Woodside Energy, which is a huge Australian oil business, petroleum business. It will produce one of the biggest oil producers in the world. So they clearly feel as though this rush away from fossil fuels is best navigated, certainly by being as big as possible during this rather important transitional phase. So as far as the EU and UK stock markets are concerned, a big drop yesterday. They were playing catch up on all that volatility from Wall Street on Friday. Again, don't want to read too much into where equity markets are going at the moment. I think we ought to wait for the big geopolitical decisions before we make any judgments about that. But if you're nervous, now's the time to be nervous and stay away from them, I would say. As far as the UK is concerned, pump prices at record levels, once again, for all the obvious reasons. A new record yesterday, and motoring organisations are looking at it and saying, why is it not setting records every day? I don't know what it's like in your country. Certainly here in South Africa, petrol pumps have been rising as well. The cost of living crisis is going to hit the UK very, very hard indeed, as it probably will all companies as well. And oil itself, as far as the wholesale market concerned, Brent, it's on the brink of $100 a barrel. Now, these forecasts, if you remember, I cast doubts about them at the beginning of the year. I was completely wrong. And it looks like we're going to achieve, or rather, if you think it's an achievement, or getting to the level of $100 a barrel by now, and we're not even really up to March yet, not even a third of the way through the year. What will the outlook for Bitcoin be? Now, this is quite important, isn't it? A narrative which it should have been tested by what's been happening. Equities down, interest rates, inflation up, and all the rest of it. And Bitcoin was thought to be a bit of a shield from all that, in the same way that safe haven metals like gold are. The possibility of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates remains over the market. What will Bitcoin do? I think we can learn a great deal about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies from the way in which they react to the current crisis. Again, not putting any expectation on it right now. It's just important to see how Bitcoin actually moves. So a big week coming up. Then we're going to hear from the Fed. We're also going to hear about UK inflation as well. Interest rate rises. It's likely that the people are looking at a 0.5% interest rate rise as far as the Fed's concerned. That's their first one. When they first start putting their toe in the water, other central banks will follow, not least in the UK, where it's expected now that each month towards the end of the year will probably see a slight rise in interest rates because of rising inflation and because of the cost of living. Again, we've talked often on this programme before whether inflation is a spike or whether it's actually underlying everything, and it looks like it is underlying things at the moment. That, so far, is your global view.
Okay, Michael. Energy markets are on edge. Stock markets are falling. There's so much uncertainty in the world. Confidence is plunging in many parts of the world. Not necessarily this time around because of COVID-19, but because of the tension between Ukraine and Russia. How much worse do you think the situation can get, particularly as the expectation is that diplomacy will help to manage the situation? But what if diplomacy fails and we have either war or we have sanctions? What should we expect? How bad will it be? Not just for the European Union or for Europe, but for the entire world. And then a company called Mihua International Medical Technologies, a Chinese company, is trying to list on the US, on Wall Street, on NASDAQ, raise an IPO. And this is the first time since October that a Chinese company will go that way. What does this mean as a signal? Because in the last few weeks, we have had more Chinese companies also trying to list in the New York market. Will Mehua Technologies, which supplies medical equipment around the world, is it likely to suffer the same fate as Didi? Because the tension between the US and China has not in any way abated. And, still you find Chinese companies going in that direction. Although this Mehua International Technologies is just looking for about $87.5 million, which will look like small money, but it's like a good signal. And then quickly, the situation in Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has invoked the Emergencies Act of 1988. And under that, the Canadian authorities will freeze bank accounts, vehicle insurance will be withdrawn, the police will be given more powers. Now, the whole idea is to protect trade and to prevent, disruption in Canada. Already supply chains have been affected. Again, how worse can that get in the light of this draconian law that has not been used, since about 50 years?
Let's do the IPOs first of all. I don't know the answer to it. If I were doing the story, what I would do is to try to find out how much Chinese companies don't like the fact that the authorities in China, the communist authorities there, are actually trying to stop IPOs taking place outside their own country. Now, there must be a wish for overseas investors, particularly in this medical company that you mentioned, to try to get involved in that. So I think that's the way that I'd be looking at it. I don't know what the detail. It's very, very difficult to get detail out of that. But as I say, what you do is you act on indications rather than try to get under the skin of what the government's actually trying to do there. But that's the way I would approach that story. As far as Ukraine is concerned, I think that looking at some of the major asset managers over the weekend and this morning, what they've been saying is what they expect diplomacy. They're not necessarily thinking there'll be war, but there will be spikes of uncertainty, and I think that's being shown at the moment. So you're getting conflicting noises, just as there always are in moments like this. But let's hope that diplomacy actually gets its way. But it's going to be a very, very volatile period. I think that's the way that asset managers are looking at it right now. As far as Canada's concerned, that's a very interesting experiment, isn't it? It's something, again, we've talked about on this programme before, as to whether or not a government can actually mandate vaccinations, or whether they leave it to the population to be vaccinated or not, as they wish. I'd be very interested to see how this plays out. Again, it prides itself as being a liberal and not an authoritative society. Maybe Trudeau will get his wish, but I think that if he does, it'll echo all the way around the world in economies, particularly I'm sure like the UK as well, maybe yours too, about mandatory vaccinations, because it's something that people who believe in democracy have kind of moved away from in the past.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aka Wilson. Thank you.
Our dependable Rotas Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotas.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, we kick off with the European Union, or the EU Commission, rather. Executive Vice President of the EU Commission, Margaret Vestager, announced that there's an 820 million euro package. I think it's about 160 million in grants and then the rest in loans over the next 3 years that's supposed to enhance Nigeria's digital connectivity. She led a delegation to Vice President Osibanjo to make this announcement. And it's supposed to enhance connectivity, improve digital skills, move public institutions from a manual setting to a more digital setting, and essentially just, get Nigeria's digital economy to, get to the potential that it can actually reach. Vice President Osibanjo, welcomed the initiative, said it's happy that they're doing that to assist the nation in getting there. And it's a very good initiative. Thing is just, we need more money, all right? I think this translates to about 385 or 390 billion naira, which, pick a state, any one state could swallow that up easily. When you think about the amount of money it would take to upgrade infrastructure, and when we talk about infrastructure and you want to get to the nitty-gritty. I mean, literally computers, laptops from public schools. That's just one half of it. They also talked about digitizing public offices. So think about any public office you've been to, operated by any particular states, and how they carry out operations there, and what it would take to digitize. Pick a public hospital and record keeping there. What it would take to go from a manual setting to a digital setting, and how much money that will cost. Then you've got skill development. The cost of the people who will, teach those skills, the environment where the learning will take place, and then power. I mean, every conversation about improving digital services and a digital economy must have, there's a power component to that, right? So it's again, laudable, very welcome, but this is over the next 3 or 4 years, I believe. But we when you think about our needs, it's a grand project, but every little bit helps, as I say. To inflation, we're expecting inflation data due today for Nigeria year-on-year for January from the Bureau of Statistics. I've been on the website, I haven't seen anything yet, but we should get those figures. Food inflation let me start with headline. So for December, after 8 months of deceleration, we saw an uptick in December 2021, 15.63% year-on-year. The Bureau of Statistics attributed this, so you have 15.63 of it, 15.64 headline inflation, and you had 17.37 food inflation, the headline figure for food, which is very high. In fact, thanks for playing the Valentine's Day package yesterday, that report was essentially how inflation has driven up cakes, flowers, chocolates, and so on. So the Bureau of Statistics said that the reason why we had an uptick in December was because of the festive period and demand. So if you logically conclude that there should be some type of leveling off of demand in January, then we should see hopefully a deceleration in inflation figures for January. So we'll find out today if those figures come up. So I don't know, maybe a 30 basis point decrease, maybe 40 basis points. So you might go from 15.6 to 15.2, 15.1, who knows, maybe even 14.9. But then, there could be surprises depending on a whole number of other factors. So we'll see what those numbers give us. But then just to remember for everyone, inflation in Nigeria is high. It has a strangling impact on disposable income. Wages are not rising to compensate for that. So it's a tight situation for a lot of Nigerians. Okay, so the central bank. So I don't know if you've seen this already. There's this Friends of Emefiele statement that's been put out saying who is afraid of Godwin Emefiele. This is around whispers of him apparently, or rather, let me carefully say this. This is whispers around support groups that want him to run for president. And this isn't new. I mean, there was a This Day cover story back in October or even September of last year, maybe November, where This Day newspaper went into all the different potential candidates for president, and it was wide ranging. And he was on there. His image was on there. So there's because of the talk of him possibly wanting to run for president, there's been a number of stuff out on social media. So his friends of his apparently got together to ask him if he's going to run. He said no, that he's focused on his job, and that President Buhari will conclude his succession process due to according to global best practices and so on and so forth. But the thing is this: there's for each support group that's pushing different people across the country, they all have their reasons. The reasons for the supporters of Emefiele that want him to run, they want a technocrat. They want somebody who focuses on the economy and can push it forward. And literally every time you hear Godwin Emefiele speak, he's only talking about the economy. He talks about foreign exchange, domestic production, manufacturing, healthcare, and so on and so forth. So there's that. So as far as that statement that was put out, they're saying that he's just focused on his job and he's leaving the politics elsewhere. But he hasn't officially said whether he's running or not. So that's that's still out there. Finally, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is one of their largest sugar factories. We know what's been going on with the whole insecurity situation there. I think it's called the Finacha Sugar Factory. About 270,000 tons per year in production. They've been hampered due to the Oromo Army Liberation Force. They've disrupted their their operations. And I mean, think about this again, going back to the Valentine's Day report. If you are a bakery and you're in Ethiopia and you need sugar to make your cakes and this happens, you can't get it, prices are going to increase because supply has been impacted. So that's yet another. But then this Ethiopia situation, we know it's been going on for quite a while. So, you know, hopefully things get better. But for now, that's pretty tough.
Well, we hope so. We certainly do. I wanted to talk about the EU story because in that story, the Vice President was quoted about talking about the world heading to net zero emissions and Nigeria's role with the gas industry and what have you. How far along are we with that promise about, what's it called, race to zero routine gas flaring by 2020? It was actually 2030, but the Muhammadu Buhari administration thought we could, you know, do it by 2020. Well,
no, that's still a very long way away. I mean, just look at the emissions picture. It's a pie. If you want to use this table, so Nigeria can be here claiming net emissions. Look, South Africa, coal demand has jumped back up. It's really hard. But if we focus on the country, there's just too many competing energy demands for dirty fossil fuels that would negate the plans that we have to get to net zero. However, within the context of the digitization conversation, yes, I mean, renewable energy and so on and so forth, worthy cause, but as far as getting there by 2030, no, there's still a long way to go.
Oh,
Next administration will deal with that.
There's an EU-Africa summit, EU-African Union summit later this week, taking place in Brussels. And it's good to see, you know, that there's that partnership between the EU and Africa that the EU Commission is trying to encourage. And ahead of that meeting, we have this delegation from the EU, meeting with the Vice President Osinbajo and providing this facility of 820 million euros, which you translated into about 390 billion naira. I hope that we know that that's money that we will pay back. That is not free cash.
Free, right.
Now, but in terms of the objectives, you know, of deepening the digital economy in Nigeria, I think that all those objectives are useful. Promoting entrepreneurship, investing in digital skills, you know, particularly among young people in Nigeria, many of whom are doing wonderful things in the areas of STEM and also in the fintech space. And also this whole idea of using technology to drive the development process. All that will cost money. But the major problem we always have here is this gap between inflow and outflow.
Right.
Now, how many of these grants have we received or loans have we taken from anywhere? And we will have laudable objectives on the table, but at the same time, you know, in terms of outcome, in terms of the outflow, you really won't have something concrete to latch onto. And I hope that that will not be the case in this particular, instance, that there will be concrete deliverables that we can measure within timelines. This is a 3-year intervention by 2024. By 2024, this administration that has done this will probably no longer be in office. So, and this is election year,
right?
You know, whenever the money arrives, we hope that there will be people with enough presence of mind to follow through on those objectives. That's one. The second one, it has to do with Godwin Emefiele. Yes, last weekend, specifically on Saturday, there was some commotion around Lagos.
Right.
When pictures went out, flyers went out, videos of persons wearing T-shirts, Mayfi for 2023.
Yeah.
You know, in a very colorful event. In fact, at some point, you know, the news was put out that Emefiele himself was going to attend the event and he was going to declare for the presidency.
Yeah.
You know, but as it has turned out, that is not the case.
Right.
A week earlier, there was also a similar commotion around Godwin Emefiele when the 2022 committee had an event here in Lagos for 3 days,
right,
which was attended, you know, across the social spectrum and political spectrum in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And the 2022 committee had to put out a statement that the 2022 committee is committed to rescuing Nigeria. That is not, a deus ex machina, a vehicle for any kind of a partisan interest. So apparently, after a fashion in Nigeria, you know, some people just think, I don't want to be nasty, but it looks like saying we want this person as president has become some kind of a business.
Right.
Because I don't imagine that all this, we want this person to be president, we want that person to be president. I don't imagine that they are doing it free. Somebody must be funding it from somewhere. But it's important that, Godwin Emefiele, the CBN governor, has come forward to say, well, his future is in the hands of God, that President Buhari has every right to plan his succession, and that he suspects that the blackmail, the attacks on his person, have been engineered by persons who probably suspect that he may be interested and they want to stop him. But he doesn't need to be apologetic one way or the other. He's qualified under Section 131 of the 1999 Constitution to be president if he wants to be, and he should not succumb to anybody trying to harass him. If there are people who can put money together, rent hall, and promote him, that's their business. But what we know is that he's not under any pressure to look for a job. He was reappointed in 2019.
Yes, he was.
So he will still be a CBN governor, all things being equal, till 2024. So he doesn't come across as a man being under pressure. But I saw something in the Friends of Emefiele's statement. Yeah. They use the opportunity again to do PR for him by listing his achievements, what he has done with recession, what he has done.
What are friends for?
Interest groups.
He has friends who can come and do a PR. When I got to that point, I was just thoroughly amused. I thought they are marketing him again, even while offering a clarification.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now for an update on the COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Omoran is here with us. Good morning, Adeswa.
Good morning, Tunu. Great to be here again. Good morning, Dr. Bati.
Good morning.
Well, the WHO boss, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, has again warned against what he describes as the false narrative that the COVID-19 pandemic is over. Well, Dr. Tedros was speaking with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken during the Global Action Meeting to address the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. He says this narrative is being driven by countries with high vaccine coverage with the lower severity of the Omicron variant. But he did not mention names of these countries where we are seeing this narrative being driven. By Thursday this week, we should get a clearer picture of the movement of the pandemic in the last 7 days, as we normally would, thanks to the WHO Epidemiological Weekly Report. But for now, the Johns Hopkins University tally shows us that we have at least 413 million infections so far. Over 5.8 million people have died, and over 10.1 billion vaccine doses have been administered. Well, here in Nigeria, a couple of moments ago, the NCDC released the latest data for infections. It says 75 cases and no COVID-19 related deaths were officially reported from 8 states in the country. And vaccination against COVID-19 or the coronavirus continues across the 36 states as well as the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Over 24 million doses of vaccines have now been administered in Nigeria. Did you know it was February 14, 2020 that Africa detected and confirmed its first COVID-19 case in Egypt? Well, to mark 2 years on, yesterday, the WHO gave an evaluation of the pandemic in the continent. The global health body says Africa now has the capacity to manage COVID-19 cases. It says, well, its capacity to manage it has actually increased. And that's the way the WHO put it. It says this is possible with increased availability of trained health workers, oxygen, and medical supplies. The WHO also says that Africa has drawn from its experience in responding to other outbreaks of other diseases to tackle the pandemic. And with the support from the WHO, it has bolstered public health measures, learned crucial lessons, improved tactics, and grown better at responding to the virus. And it comes on a day when more than 60 charities, campaigners, and non-governmental organizations, including the Medicines Sans Frontières or Doctors Without Borders, accuse Moderna of attempting to derail the plan of the WHO to manufacture more COVID-19 vaccines on the continent of Africa. They say the pharmaceutical company plans to do this by enforcing the patent on its vaccine. This is something it had promised it would not do during the stretch of the pandemic. Well, in an open letter, they urge Moderna to act in the interest of people and not profit. Let's go to Canada, where the Prime Minister has invoked emergency powers to end protests that is paralyzing a lot of places in the country, especially the capital, Ottawa. Well, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has had enough of this, and this emergency was last used in 1970, coincidentally, when his father was the Prime Minister. Well, we also saw copycat freedom convoys in Belgium, where demonstrators were joined from France, Holland, and Germany to demand an end to COVID-19 restrictions in Europe. Well, Israel also saw its own freedom convoy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem as the truckers drove on the highway. And finally this morning, Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall and the future Queen of Consort of the UK has tested positive for COVID-19. This comes 4 days after her husband, Prince Charles, tested positive. Their COVID-19 status is sure to draw concerns for the status of the Queen's health. You recall that she had interaction with her son, Prince Charles, 2 days before he tested for COVID-19. Well, Buckingham Palace hasn't told us the status of the Queen's health since Thursday. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Adeswa. Well, the Queen had better not have COVID. I will personally go and protest somewhere. I think she's amazing. But yeah, you know, all the very best to, what are their names now? They're Duke and Duchess of what now? I can't remember. Charles and Camilla.
He's the Prince of Wales and she's the Duchess of Cornwall.
Duchess of, yeah, they didn't give her Princess of Wales, did they? Well, anyway, we hope they recover speedily. As for the Canadian Freedom Convoy and just the complete mess that they're making, it's really interesting that Justin Trudeau has now really taken the gloves off, and he's also being accused of being a dictator. I'm following on from what the story you raised yesterday about Alhaji Lai Mohammed, you know, raising parallels between, you know, Canada's criticisms of the Nigerian government during the NSAS protests. But this is really beyond that now. I don't know how this is going to affect his party, and I don't know how it's going to play politically in Canada, which is such a bastion of, you know, liberal democracy and individual freedoms, having people's accounts frozen and what have you. I don't know if this is really the best way to have handled it, but I guess they're doing everything but calling in the military. For them, that is not an option, and I do hope in Nigeria it no longer becomes an option, which is, I think, why he's had to go this route rather than, you know, calling in the military. But, you know, I'm not sure how it's going to work for him. I mean, his father did the same thing. I've talked about this on this show in 1970 to quell the Quebec terrorist crisis. It was called the War Measures Act at that time, and even then it was controversial. But that was to do with the sovereignty of Canada and Quebec wanting to be an independent nation. And, you know, his father, Pierre Trudeau, was simply not having it. And I guess this is the same attitude that the son, Justin Trudeau, is taking to these truckers.
Okay, Canada, let's start with that. It's very clear that, you know, the Trudeau administration in Canada is under heavy pressure. Pressure from these demonstrations that have gone on for about 3 weeks now, with no sign of the protesters giving up. Now, pressure also from the United States. President Biden calling Trudeau because supply chains have been disrupted. Trade between both countries has been affected. Car makers in the automotive industry, Ford, Toyota, Chrysler, Honda, they've had to shut down plants. So something drastic needed to be done. They were able to clear the Ambassador Bridge on Sunday, which is the major link in the southern border between the U.S. and Canada, responsible for a heavy volume of trade between both countries. Most of the trade between both countries being, in any case, by road. Now, Justin Trudeau, in introducing this Emergencies Act of 1988, in fact, this Emergencies Act 1988 is a replacement for the War Measures Act, because the War Measures Act was heavily criticized because at the time the military was called in. But he says that this will be a time-limited, 30 days in the first instance, intervention, and measures will be introduced to protect the public order. More powers will be given to the police to arrest people, and maybe detain them. Bank accounts will be frozen of anybody connected with the protest. Terrorist financing rules will be expanded to target crowdfunding and cryptocurrency. The vehicle insurance of people involved in this, would also be suspended. But in any case, he says the measures that will be introduced will be appropriate, will be, proportionate to the extent of the threat. However, he still needs to take it to Parliament in the next 1 week. And he will need the support of the New Democratic Party to be able to get it through Parliament. It takes immediate effect, but if he's unable to process it through Parliament, then it will not work. And the fear is about democratic rights. But the key difference between the Emergencies Act of 1988 and the War Measures Act before it is that this has to be implemented in line with what is called the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So there is a caveat. That's a critical difference. As for Moderna, sometime early last year, had said that it was not going to, use patents to, frustrate the development of vaccines, while the intellectual property rights belongs to it. But now, the problem is that in South Africa, Afrigen Biologics is using reverse engineering to produce, local vaccines in Africa. And now we're told that Moderna is now applying for patents and also coming up with patent applications. And the fear is that since Moderna has the intellectual property right for the data that Afrigen Biologics is using and that others may use, it may get to the point where the company can unilaterally on its own decide that, the pandemic is not so serious again and that it has become endemic. And on the basis of that, invoke the principles of his patents. And that's why, charities, civil society organizations are saying Moderna should not go that way. Because if it were to do so, it would be prioritizing profit over people. But in any case, these big farmers, they are into this for profit anyway, in the long run. It's just the WHO and the rest of the world saying low and middle income countries should become vaccine hubs so that there can be equity and vaccination coverage, will be easier for many of these developing countries. But I hope Moderna will respond to the pressure. But all of this shows how vulnerable we are in Africa, because we're not developing our own technology, even in the face of this pandemic. We rely on companies like Moderna. And that should be a wake-up call for African governments to see that, look, we need to invest more in technology. We need to raise our capacity to compete on all fronts with the rest of the world, so that so that we won't be at the mercy of organizations like Moderna. However, those groups that are appealing to Moderna to go and withdraw those patent applications that it has put up in South Africa, I think they have a point. But long term, Africa must wake up. Thank you very much, Adesso.